and I've seen it flip very dramatically with many women. And I suppose the most single most convincing evidence of that, I worked with high-end lawyers in Toronto for about 10 years. I was part of an organization. We went to law firms, high-end law firms, and said, send us your most productive people, and we'll help them iron out whatever wrinkles there might still be in their life. And the advantage to them is that things will go better for them, and the advantage to you is they'll be even more productive. And there's a good management dictum, which is pay the most attention to your most productive people because they're bringing in the bulk of your revenue disproportionately. And so I worked with men and women who were at the peak of their careers in a very difficult enterprise. And so these were women who were generally very attractive, well put together physically, pretty stable psychologically, extremely conscientious, very, very smart, and high achieving from like junior high all the way through high school.
These are high IQ, high performing women, and they are still leaving in their late 20s, early 30s. So apparently smart women are smart enough to know when is the time to get the heck out of Dodge. But this is also an issue for companies. You have to understand, companies are bending over backwards trying to keep women. So the return on investment sometimes for female employees is not the same as it is for a male employee. People don't want to accept that fact. But when a company invests training and dollars into a woman, understanding that she is maybe 24, 25, they might not be too content with the outcome on that one once she leaves, because where's the profit for the company going? Where's the money? They're not going to get it back. You know, in the military, there's actually a time that you have to wait in order to have a child. Like you can't get pregnant in basic training. You'll get chaptered, right? They will kick you out because they need the return on investment for funding your military training, right? So, I mean, economics, guys.
University, law school, onto the top firms, rocketing up through the ranks, full partnership by the time they were 29 or 30. And all the law firms, all the women bailed out, all of them. The law firms couldn't keep them.
Oh, this is lovely. Hello, guys. Rebecca is in the chat. Rebecca was an entrepreneur boss babe who got written about in magazines, but even she was smart enough to know when it was time to get the hell out and get married, okay? Congratulations. Shout out to Rebecca. So she has her own take on this video on her channel. Make sure you guys head over there after the stream or even during the stream. She's cool.
And I was really, and I talked to the women a lot about this because I was very interested in it, because I knew the law firms were bending themselves over backwards and tying themselves into knots trying to retain these women, because why wouldn't they? You know, just.
So get this, guys. What he is saying is that these companies try to pay these women financially and compensate them to stay, and they still left. Do you know how incredible that decision has to be, that you were being presented with a $25,000 bonus to stay on with the company and you still walk away to have children? That is how powerful the maternal biological imperative is. And it's not something to shy away from. It's okay to want to have a baby. I think women are just absolutely terrified about making the wrong choice with mate selection, but they wouldn't be so terrified if they knew the larger frameworks and schemas that were going on. For example, birth control changes how you smell a man. And I don't mean pheromones. I mean, as a woman, it has been proven many times over that we can smell if a man's immune system is compatible with our immune system to give our children the best probability of survival to pathogens, right? We take this birth control, it puts you in a state of pregnancy. You're not actually pregnant, but your body thinks you're pregnant. So there is not necessarily that drive when you're already pregnant to be more discriminate with mate selection. We can see that in certain primates that women, well, not women, females, in certain primates, females are allowed to have sex with whomever they want when they are pregnant, but not when they're ovulating. Things to think about.
Just being greedy capitalists is enough. You know, they don't want to lose their high-performing women because they're performing at the highest level, and they couldn't keep them. The women wanted to have 9-to-5 jobs. They wanted to bind the job so they could have a life. And that was especially true once they got interested in having a child or had one. And what they really came to was a very interesting realization. So because they were highly conscientious women, they sort of did their duty and worked hard and diligently and didn't pop their head up to ask questions. They're in junior high, they got the best grades. They were in high school, they got the best grades, and so on, all the way through, right till they reached partnership. But that's sort of an apogee, right? You hit partnership in a senior law firm, it's like you're at the top of your profession. Well, then what?
Yes, exactly. So I was on a live stream earlier with Pearl, and I understand that women, we want to know. We want to know if we can do. We have dreams. We want to accomplish these things. Young women, if you are watching, if you plan appropriately and you have your focus on your career, you can have your career semi-established by age 24. So you have that out of the way. You've got that financial security. Hopefully you don't have too much student loan debt, which, some of these things make sense. If you're going to be a physician's assistant and you're a woman, right? And maybe you're just a general practitioner, maybe you finish it by 26, whatever, that's still good time. If you want to do both, just get the career done early. Okay? Because look at this. These women outperformed men. And I was in a position like that. Oftentimes I outperformed men in the military, not physically, just professionally. I was out there and doing it. But we get it done early. You throw your hands up in the air. Well, like, what's going on? Right? So those are just some forms of programming that go on, because if you listen to what Jordan is saying, is that these women are doing it on autopilot. They've always been high performing. They didn't know anything else to do. We just want to be good chimps, and good chimps get good grades. Nobody is telling these high IQ girls that they can use their intelligence for optimal mate selection. That's not discussed, but we're changing it, guys. We're changing it.
Well, so then they looked around and they thought, here I am with all these like hyper competitive men, perfectly willing to work 80 hours a week nonstop to stay at the top. What the hell are they doing? Because that's the real question. What is it that characterizes this small percentage of hyper competitive men? It's not. You can assume that that's how everyone should be, but first of all, that isn't how everyone is. Or you can flip that and say, well, there's only a small minority of human beings that are willing to do this, to work flat out 8 hours a week. I mean, they're certainly being paid for it. Let's make no mistake about that. But
so what he's talking about here, I'm gonna put this in regular people speak, is that oftentimes you will see these very, very, very high performing men. And some of them, they don't want to have this conversation with themselves. Let's say like they're a top of half of 1% earner. They have literally given their entire lives up to capitalism. I'm not here to say that that is a good thing or a bad thing, but that is a thought that occurs in some people's minds. You have to think about the Pareto principle. 80% of 20% of the people are producing most of the work. That's normal and that's typical. So I also think that there's some good things that are going on in society. Gen Z is very much into the self-care thing. They might overdo it, but even they are starting to know that a career will not fulfill you the same way a family will. And I know that we're saying that all of this is on women because they're choosing who they will or will not have sex with. They're just straight up choosing not to reproduce is what women are choosing, right? But if we could get men to be masculine again, maybe we could convince some of these girls to give some of the cookie up. You know what I'm saying? I think we could do it. Back to Jordan.
But well, what about the rest of life? Well, that's what the women asked. Why am I doing this? And that's a great question. Well, for men, there's a different answer than for women. It's a really different answer. And it isn't like the men are exactly thinking this through. It's more like this is an integral part of male motivation. The more successful you are as a man, the more women like you.
Well, the problem that you have now is that as women are getting better educated, with more employment, more status, more prestige, they compete themselves out of their ability to find an attractive mate.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I was having I have conversations with professionals behind closed doors that are men, because I've been telling them, I'm like, look, I think there's something going on with mate selection here. I don't think women got it correct. I think we've got to change something about it. And oftentimes the rebuttal is, well, I see women that are married to beta men. I ask if these women are happy. There's crickets. I very rarely get disputed at this point, because the other thing that I bring up is that it's very hard for women to stay committed to that kind of man. And They're going to get no pushback. Let me look at this chat real quick. Mel says, Aly, you just proven the pay gap doesn't exist if women are outperforming men. I'm not saying that the pay gap doesn't exist. Okay, how about this? There's an earnings gap. That's the difference. But it's because women are making different choices. In the most egalitarian societies, women still segregate themselves to nurturing and social jobs, while men will segregate themselves to things like STEM or maybe even trades. So they call it the motherhood penalty. This is what I mean by social sciences are they think they're helping women. They think that they're helping us by relieving us of literally everything that makes being a woman special. But they're kind of selling us a bag of lies. It's not true. So the pay gap comes down to how many hours is a woman working? That's one. Does she have children? Is she likely to call off work for these children? What kind of job does the woman have in comparison to a man? Because it has been illegal since I think there was an act. It was passed in the 1960s. I don't know if it's the Equal Pay Act, but it is illegal in the United States for a company to pay a woman less for the same quality of work in the same amount of time. It's not allowed. And what kind of company is going to take that risk? And if it's so much cheaper to hire women, then why aren't just companies coming out of the woodwork to pay for the cheaper labor? It does not make sense. There's not an actual pay gap. That's a feelings argument. That's an emotional argument. I mean, you guys are pretty hip to most of these things already at this point in time.